This AI everyone's talking about, this new tool from China. Some are saying it's going to be the next big thing, even the next DeepSeek. You've sent us a bunch of stuff, articles, posts, even a YouTube video. So let's get to the bottom of this. What makes it different from DeepSeek? Can it really do all the things people are saying?
Well, the big thing about Manus is that it's being called an AI agent, not just a chatbot. It can do more, like way more. It's almost like having, like a really good intern who can do tons of research, analyze data, even build you a simple website, all just from what you tell it to do.
So is that like in that YouTube video where it did a whole financial analysis of Tesla stock? It had the graphs, the buy or sell recommendations, the whole thing?
Yeah, and someone else had it plan out a whole trip to Japan, personalized restaurant recommendations. It can do it all. It doesn't just give you info, it acts on it, which is where this whole multi-agent system thing comes in.
Okay, multi-agent system. Break that down for me. What does that even mean?
Basically, it's a bunch of different AIs all working together. Some are good at pulling information from the web, others crunch numbers or make visuals, some are even writing code. It's a team effort.
So it's not just one AI trying to do everything. It's like a whole team under the hood. But if all this is happening in the background, how do we know it's not some, black box making decisions we don't get?
That's the cool part. Manus has this window, they call it Manus's computer, where you can literally watch it work, see the steps it's taking, and you can even jump in and change stuff if you need to. It's more like you're working with the AI.
That's a huge difference from DeepSeek, which, don't get me wrong, is awesome for conversation, but it does feel like you're just sending a message out there and hoping for the best. So DeepSeek is the chat king, and Manus is what? The taskmaster.
That's a good way to put it. DeepSeek's amazing for conversation, giving you information. Manus wants to get things done. And it does a pretty good job, too. There's this GAIA benchmark that tests AI. Manus consistently beat OpenAI's deep research, especially on those tasks where it had to do a bunch of steps or think outside the box.
I read about these real-world tests. They had Manus do 3 things. Find all the reporters who cover China tech, then find a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City with very specific criteria, and then come up with 50 people who would be good for the MIT Technology Review's Innovators Under 35 list. How did that go?
Really well, at least for the research and adaptability stuff. Finding those reporters, digging up apartments based on really picky needs, it was impressive.
But I'm guessing it wasn't perfect, right?
Well, there were some issues. Paywalls tripped it up sometimes. It got a little confused if the instructions were super complex, and it wasn't the best at dealing with huge blocks of text all at once.
And there's this whole China factor that keeps coming up. Some of the articles talk about how DeepSeek censors some answers in China, but Manus seems to be giving uncensored answers, even on sensitive topics. Is that a big deal?
It's definitely interesting. Manus gave accurate, uncensored info on stuff like the Tiananmen Square protests back in 1989 and some of the issues in Xinjiang. Now, whether it's because it doesn't have the same restrictions as DeepSeek or its purpose is just different, it's tough to say.
Yeah. It's still pretty early for Manus, right? It's in beta. The articles mention crashes, errors, all the fun stuff that comes with new tech.
It's true. Manus is definitely still under development. But think about DeepSeek in the early days. It had its share of issues, but look at it now.
So, big picture. What makes Manus potentially such a game changer?
Well, for one thing, it's way cheaper to use per task compared to deep research. A lot of the tech behind it is open source, meaning people can build on it. Some folks are even saying it could be a real competitor to those high subscription fees that OpenAI charges for their AI agents.
And that whole transparency thing we talked about, the ability to see what it's doing, actually work with it, that could be huge too, right? Feeling like you're collaborating with the AI, not that it's controlling you.
Absolutely. It's a different way of thinking about AI, for sure. And here's where things get even more interesting. There are already open source versions of Manus popping up online. People are taking the basic tech and just running with it.
That's wild. Everyone's jumping on this. So is this the next DeepSeek?
I guess that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Yeah,
We've covered what Manus is, how it's different, and why everyone's so excited. But to really get it, we need to dig a little deeper.
Okay, so Manus can do all these amazing things, but hey, show W, what's under the hood? We keep hearing about this multi-agent system. Is it really that revolutionary?
It's pretty smart, actually. It's like instead of having one giant AI trying to handle everything, Manus has a team of, you can say, specialist agents. Each one is good at a specific thing. Some are pros at searching the web, others are great at data analysis, some can even code like champs.
So it's like having a whole team of AI specialists working on a project, each one tackling their part. But how do they all stay organized? Is there Like an AI project manager making sure everything runs smoothly?
That's a good way to think about it. You're right, there's a central system that basically acts as a project manager, breaking down big tasks into smaller chunks and then assigning those chunks to the best agent for the job.
Gotcha. Now, one article mentioned something about Manus running in a Linux sandbox environment. What does that even mean in plain English?
It's a safety measure,
Yeah.
essentially. Think of it like Manus having its own little virtual computer where it can experiment, run code, install things, and mess with files without affecting your actual computer.
Oh, so it's like a contained playground for the AI to run wild in without messing up my system.
Exactly. It's super important for security, especially because Manus can actually execute commands and interact with the operating system directly.
Hold on commands. Like it can talk to the computer's operating system. That seems kind of intense.
It is. It's almost like having a built-in programmer in the AI. It can run programs, manage files, and even automate stuff using shell and command line execution.
Wow. And I read that it can even control a web browser.
Yep, it can browse and pull data from websites, but it can also interact with elements on a page, like fill out forms, even run JavaScript code.
So, hypothetically, could Manus book a flight for me? Buy something online, even post something on my social media?
In theory, yes, but remember, it's still under development. Those features might not be completely ready for prime time yet.
Okay, speaking of development, those benchmarks we talked about earlier, the GAIA benchmark, where Manus did better than OpenAI's deep research, what exactly does that benchmark measure?
The GAIA benchmark is designed to test how well an AI handles real-world problems. It gives the AI a variety of tasks, from simple info gathering to more complex, multi-step problem solving, and then it scores the performance.
And Manus did exceptionally well.
Right. It did. It showed some really impressive problem-solving skills, especially with those tasks that had multiple steps. Of course, the scores did go down a little as the difficulty went up, but that's to be expected, even for the most advanced AIs. Super complex stuff that needs abstract thinking is still a challenge.
Right, that makes sense. But I did see one article that questioned whether Manus is really a revolutionary breakthrough or just, a really clever combination of AI tech that already exists.
That's a hot topic in the AI world right now. Some experts say because Manus relies on these existing models like Claude Sonnet and Qwen fine-tunes, it's more of an integration project than a brand new discovery.
But if it's combining those existing things in a way that gets incredible results, even beating out the competition, does it really matter if it's not totally original? Isn't that still innovation?
That's the key question. It comes down to how well Manus actually performs in the real world, not necessarily what's going on under the hood.
True. But we can't ignore those early issues people have reported, right? The crashes, errors, general instability. Are these just growing pains or are they red flags?
Probably a bit of both. Any new tech, especially something as complex as Manus, is going to have some hiccups. But it is true that those issues are cropping up pretty often, and that does raise some questions about how solid the infrastructure really is right now.
Especially with all this talk about how Manus can access your computer files and execute commands. Security has to be top of mind, right?
Definitely. As more people start using Manus, security and stability are going to be super important. The developers have got to make sure that the platform is secure and users can trust it. But what I find really exciting is the potential for community involvement. Remember all those open source versions we talked about?
Yeah. Imagine developers from all over the world working together to make Manus even better, pushing AI to its limits. It's like a global brain trust.
That's a great way to put it. It's a future where AI isn't just in the hands of a few powerful companies, but everyone can use it and benefit from it.
So this whole open source thing, is that ultimately a good thing or a bad thing for Manus?
It's a bit of both, honestly. Open source is great because it means things can evolve quickly and the community gets involved. It's like a constant brainstorming session. We see it with all those open source versions of Manus popping up. It shows how much excitement and collaboration there is around it.
Right. But there has to be a downside, right?
Well, open source software can sometimes be more vulnerable. It might not have the same level of rigorous testing and quality control that commercial software has, so there's a higher chance of errors and vulnerabilities.
So it's like a trade-off between rapid progress and making sure things are stable and secure.
Pretty much. It's a delicate balance that the Manus developers are going to have to figure out as the project grows.
Now, it seems like everyone is comparing Manus to DeepSeek. They're even calling this a DeepSeek moment. But one article argued that Manus could actually be a turning point for AI in a totally different way.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? DeepSeek showed that you could build a powerful AI language model without needing a ton of infrastructure and proprietary data. But Manus could show that even super advanced AI agents don't have to be controlled by just those big tech companies with deep pockets.
Because of its open source roots and that low cost per task we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And this is happening at a time when companies like OpenAI are, rumor has it, about to launch their own high-end AI agents, but with those big subscription fees attached.
So Manus could really disrupt the market, make this tech way more accessible to people and businesses who couldn't afford it otherwise.
That's the hope, at least. It's still early days, so we'll have to see if Manus can really deliver on all this promise.
Well, we've really gotten into the technical side of Manus, its pros and cons, how it stacks up against the competition, and now it's time to look at the bigger picture. All right, so we've covered what Manus can do, but now let's think about what it all means, especially that whole thing about it giving uncensored answers in China. That seems like a really big deal.
It's definitely one of the most interesting things about Manus. We know that China keeps tight control over information online, and we've seen DeepSeek censor certain answers. But Manus seems to be playing by a different set of rules.
So is it some kind of workaround? Did the developers figure out how to get around those controls? Or are they actually trying to make Manus a more open version of DeepSeek on purpose?
It's hard to say for sure. We don't have enough information about how Manus works and what the creators really had in mind. But no matter what the reason is, the potential impact is huge.
Imagine if people in China suddenly had an AI that gave them straight-up unbiased information, even on topics that are usually off-limits.
Yeah.
That could really change things.
It could also mean that the authorities start paying a lot more attention to Manus. If they see it as a threat to their control over information, they might try to limit access to it or even shut it down completely.
It's a risky game, that's for sure. But let's step back from China for a minute and talk about how Manus could be used in different fields. I mean, the possibilities seem endless.
Absolutely. Think about finance, for instance. Manus could automate all those complicated financial reports, tell you what to invest in, maybe even manage whole investment portfolios.
And what about healthcare? It could help doctors diagnose patients, analyze tons of medical research, even create custom treatment plans.
And in education, imagine Manus tailoring lessons for each student, giving them instant feedback on their work, even grading tests.
It seems like this tech could change pretty much every industry. And it's not just about doing tasks automatically. It's about giving people tools to solve problems in completely new ways. So what's next for Manus? What should we be looking out for in the future?
Well, keep an eye on how that multi-agent system develops. As each of those agents gets more specialized and powerful, Manus is going to be able to do so much more.
And then there's the question of adding new data sources and APIs. The more information Manus can tap into, the more it can do. But if it gets really popular, won't it become a target for hackers? Security has to be a major concern, right?
You're absolutely right. As Manus gets used by more people, security and stability are going to be crucial. The developers are going to have to work really hard to keep the platform safe and protect the users. But honestly, what excites me the most is the potential for community involvement. We've already seen those open source versions popping up, and that's just the beginning.
Think about it. Developers all over the world working together to improve Manus, to push the limits of AI. It's like a global team of experts, all focused on the same goal.
It's an amazing thought. It's a future where AI isn't something that only a few companies control, but something that anyone can use and benefit from.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Manus AI, it's pretty clear this isn't just hype. This technology has the potential to change the way we work, learn, and use information across so many industries.
It really shows how fast AI is developing, and it brings up some important questions. What's the role of technology in our lives? How do we control information? Who really benefits from all these advances?
Manus might be the next DeepSeek, or it might create its own path. But either way, it reminds us that the future of AI is being shaped right now, and it's up to all of us to pay attention and make sure it's the future we want. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.